when Marlon Brando burst onto the stage wearing a T-shirt and shouting Stella in his 1947 breakthrough performance as Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire. His impact was undeniable. His performances influenced a new, rebellious generation of young actors. But what about Marlon Brando's life on the other side of the screen? It's been tainted by controversy and scandal. In 1973, he angered Hollywood when he refused his Best Actor Oscar for The Godfather. And since then, he's tried to keep out of the public eye, but in 1991, a family tragedy put him front and center in a Los Angeles courtroom. Tonight on Biography, the enigma of Marlon Brando, the actor who some consider one of the greatest ever, and the man whose personal life has been one of torment and tragedy.
Hey, Stella!
Major producers scratched their heads and said, "Who is this guy, Marlon Brando? Who is this guy?"
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
He's a master. He's a genius, if that's possible in acting.
Fletcher Christian is my name.
He was the conqueror, you know. He had to have as many women as there were in the world.
He had a great sense of humor. Also, no respect whatsoever for phoniness.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
He will be considered, and properly so, as one of the greatest actors ever to work before a camera.
I've sort of lived a contemplative life, trying to figure out what it is that I would like to do. I never really knew.
Marlon Brando's career has spanned almost 5 decades and 36 films. He is a movie star familiar to fans the world over, and yet Brando remains as elusive and complex as any character he has ever played. Controversial, compelling, and dangerous. But there is no debate about Marlon Brando, the actor. He revolutionized acting just as Picasso changed painting, by breaking all the rules.
Marlon Brando represented a seismic shift of internalizing the character's feelings. The surprise choices that he would make in presenting common emotions, that's what distinguishes Marlon Brando as an actor.
On the one hand, this man has been a towering genius as an artist, but in other respects, he's been a failure. He's been a danger to other people. He has certainly been left a trail of cruelty and indifference.
Brando's power to destroy is as compelling as his power to create. His great talent and tragic life are the stuff of legend, a legend that began over 70 years ago among the windswept farms of the American Midwest. The clock was closing in on midnight when Marlon Brando made his debut in Omaha, Nebraska on April 3rd, 1924. His birth certificate read Marlon Brando, Jr., but soon everyone called him Bud. His mother, Dorothy, was known to one and all as Dodie. Bud had 2 older sisters, Jocelyn and Frances. On the surface, at least, the Brando family, with its rugged Midwestern roots, could have been sprung from central casting, but life inside the ordinary house on Mason Street was anything but normal.
Dodie had a major drinking problem. This is a woman who was frequently out of it for days on end. There were long periods when Dodie wasn't around. Marlon's elder sister was in charge of controlling and taking care of her 2 siblings. As much as Marlon loved his mother and as much as he got from his mother, there is always the doubt, will she be there?
Adding to the children's sense of abandonment, their father, a traveling salesman, was gone for weeks at a stretch. Brando later described his father as a, quote, frightening, silent, brooding, angry, hard-drinking, rude man, a bully who liked to give orders. Bud's problems at home continued at school. He flunked kindergarten, unable or unwilling to concentrate, and continued to struggle through elementary school. When he was 11, his parents separated, then reconciled a few years later and moved to rural Illinois, where Bud developed a reputation as a fighter.
He wasn't fighting as some kids fight in school, namely, just picking fights, bullying, what have you. Quite the contrary. He would always jump into these fights on behalf of the underdog.
Upset with Bud's disobedience and academic failure, Marlon Sr. never tired of telling his son that he would amount to nothing in life. As a last resort, he packed Bud off to his alma mater, Shattuck Military Academy in Minnesota. Bud did poorly in school, but he became popular with his classmates for his irreverent behavior. And through the attention of a sympathetic English teacher, Brando discovered acting. Playing parts in several school productions gave Bud an outlet for his passions, and he developed an astonishing talent for mimicry.
Oh my, that was his forte. When you watch Bud through his half-closed eyes, you know that he was looking at that person and getting a reaction or a response from that person, which he was categorizing and filing for future reference.
Brando made it through almost 2 years at Shattuck before being expelled.
His prospects for a college career were ended. What was he going to do? He had no options in life. There was nothing settled inside him. And he was desperately looking, whether he was consciously aware of it or not, consciously looking for something to hang on to.
In 1943, he headed to New York, where he joined his sister, Jocelyn. At the age of 19, Marlon Brando began to study acting, and his gift was immediately apparent to his classmates.
Yeah, he was born with that way, born with that talent. It's not something you can acquire. He had a feeling of what was right for him,
Brando soon made his way to Stella Adler, a pioneer of method acting. In Marlon Brando, Adler found the perfect student for her raw, honest brand of performing, and Brando found a way to transform his explosive emotions into art.
Truly, Stella's influence was saving, because Marlon found something in himself, which was something he could respect, something he could rely on.
In 1944, Brando had his first hit on Broadway in I Remember Mama. He played Nels, the young son. Marlon quickly tired of repeating the role and soon became known as an inveterate prankster among the cast. Offstage, Brando was becoming known for his sexual adventures.
He definitely had many lady friends. He could charm them out of the woodwork. My father had said to me one day, after meeting Bud, he has the ability to do a great deal of work in charming the fair sex to his bed. And in those days, we would call that type of person a swordsman.
It was a sword that cut a wide swath through New York. Brando found sex intoxicating and reveled in having any woman he wanted. On stage, Brando created a sensation in Truckline Cafe, a short-lived Broadway production directed by Elia Kazan. Kazan, a brilliant director and veteran of Broadway's famous group theater, soon became another mentor to Brando. He drew a performance from the young actor that electrified audiences.
Everyone in the New York theater community, from artsy-fartsy method actors and directors to major Broadway producers, scratched their heads and said, who is this guy, Marlon Brando? Who is this guy?
But the true force of Brando's pent-up rage and urgent sexuality were first seen in A Streetcar Named Desire. Steamy, violent, and heartbreakingly tender, Tennessee Williams' landmark play opened on December 3, 1947. Directed again by Elia Kazan, Marlon played Stanley Kowalski, starring with Jessica Tandy and Kim Hunter. His unchecked, animalistic performance streaked over Broadway like a comet.
Dangerousness, such volcanicness. There was a kind of directness, a kind of energy to the language and to the performance, which no one had ever seen before.
Marlon's probably the best actor I've ever worked with in my life. And one of the reasons is his incredible sense of truth that he pulls out of himself.
The performance defined a new style of acting, emotional, real, and dangerous. Streetcar brought Marlon Brando fame, but with his success came bouts of anxiety and depression. He found fame suffocating. It felt, he said, like a noose tightening around his neck. Brando believed what he had been told by his father as a boy, that he was worthless. But soon, the lure of movie stardom would take Brando to Hollywood, where the wild young man would define a generation.
Our biography of Marlon Brando continues on A&E.
Just 4 short years after arriving in New York, Marlon Brando had conquered Broadway. He had become a sensation in A Streetcar Named Desire. And in 1949, he traveled to Hollywood to conquer film. In his first movie, The Men, Marlon portrayed an embittered paraplegic, a war veteran who fought to retain his dignity. Inevitably, Brando was tapped to portray Stanley Kowalski in the 1951 film version of A Streetcar Named Desire. Directed by his friend Elia Kazan, the desperate sexuality of the characters pierced through the repressed America of the early 1950s. Although the film was trimmed by the censors, Brando detonated sexual energy on screen.
What kind of a queen do you think you are? You know that I've been on to you from the start, and not once did you pull the wool over this boy's eyes. You come in here and you sprinkle a place with powder and you spray perfume and you stick a paper lantern over the light bulb, and lo and behold, the place is turning to Egypt, and you are the queen of the Nile, sitting on your throne, swilling down my liquor. And you know what I say? Ha ha! You hear me? Ha ha ha!
Streetcar won 12 Oscar nominations, including one for Brando. Hollywood ultimately bestowed the award on everyone involved but Brando and Kazan. However, Marlon's performance placed him among the first rank of movie actors.
That got me started in my movie career. It had another unfortunate, aspect, and that was that people invariably associated me with the part I played, so that it was difficult to believe that I didn't eat off the floor, or that I didn't run up the street with my shoes off. And so it's been a hard thing sort of living that down.
Marlon was absolutely incredible in that sense, in Streetcar, because it was very difficult for him, Stanley. Marlon is anything but like Stanley Kowalski as a human being.
Brando tried to expand his range with his next film, Viva Zapata. Teaming yet again with Elia Kazan, Marlon played a Mexican revolutionary. During filming, one woman emerged as a steady companion, Movita Castañeda. Movita was older than Marlon and seemed to provide somewhat of a center to his hectic life, made all the more intense by his voracious appetite for women.
He was the conqueror, he had to have as many women as there were in the world. He had this wonderful sense of humor. He had a wonderful, incredible masculine power over women. I say over women because it really was over women. There was nothing equal about the relationship.
One need only imagine Gielgud or Olivier playing Stanley Kowalski to understand why Brando's next film, Julius Caesar, proved the immensity of his talent. Headlining an all-star cast, Brando's Mark Antony astonished critics and audiences. His trademark mumbling and affectations were gone, replaced by a gifted classical approach to Shakespeare's timeless play.
Friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him.
During completion of Julius Caesar, Brando's close friend Elia Kazan appeared before the House Committee on Un-American Activities, drawn into the infamous witch hunt led by Senator Joseph McCarthy. Kazan was asked to name names, to turn in friends who had belonged to a communist cell within the group theater. Kazan's testimony shook Brando to the core, and his anguish was evident to Julius Caesar director Joseph Mankiewicz.
Walking with Brando, Mankiewicz recalls Marlon just walking, staring straight ahead, crying, tears rolling down his face. He turns to Brando and says, "Bud, what's wrong? What's happening?" And Brando, still looking straight ahead, not wiping away the tears, says, "That son of a bitch, how could he have done it? How could he have done it?"
Brando's despair over Kazan's actions ruptured their friendship, but he completed work on Julius Caesar and earned another Oscar nomination. But Brando's next picture would make his bad boy image part of film history.
What's the matter, Kathy? I was only trying to...
In The Wild One, released in 1954, Marlon played a tough biker who showed the Brill Cream generation how to talk the talk and walk the walk. Brando's performance inspired a whole generation of actors. James Dean, a rising young star, made himself into a Brando clone. In 1953, Elia Kazan, estranged from Marlon since the McCarthy hearings, approached his old friend to star in a new film, On the Waterfront. Brando turned him down, but Kazan held off an eager Frank Sinatra until Brando finally relented, reportedly because Marlon needed money to pay his psychiatry bills. In On the Waterfront, Marlon played Terry Malloy, an ex-boxer who unwittingly set up a mob murder.
Listen to me, Terry. Take the job. Just take it. No questions. Take it.
In the film's most famous moment, Brando confronts his brother, a gangster sent to kill him.
It's such a surprise that he's just feels bad for his brother, that his brother would go this far as to pull a gun on him, you know. And he says, "Oh, Charlie, you know, you're supposed to take care of him." He's not doing the panicky 1945 scene with a gun on you, which I think a lot of actors would have done. He's very original always.
You was my brother, Charlie. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit so I wouldn't have to take them dives for the short-end money.
Well, I had some bets down for you. You saw some money.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it.
Brando's parents visited him on the set of Waterfront. He was proud that they both had become sober and had permanently reassembled their shattered marriage. A few months later, on March 31st, 1954, Marlon Brando stood holding his mother's hand at her hospital bedside when she died. She was 57 years old. Marlon took a lock of her hair with him as he left her for the last time.
She was more than a mother. She was a friend and a supporter. You know, she backed him. Whatever he did, whatever he wanted to do.
A year to the day of his mother's death, Brando won the Academy Award for On the Waterfront, a performance director Elia Kazan called one of the finest in film history.
Yes, my ma was.
The night after winning his Oscar, Brando appeared on national television and spoke of his mother.
This is a picture, a portrait of my mom when she was about 40. And she was, I was just pausing because it's an odd thing. The night of the award was the anniversary of my mom's passing away. So it's been kind of a lot of mixed feelings, and it's odd that it should, you know, we bring it up now. But she was a marvelous person. I miss her very much.
Following his mother's death, Brando hurtled through many relationships. He was briefly engaged to 19-year-old Frenchwoman Josanne Mariani Berenger, began a long-term affair with actress Rita Moreno, and dated Marilyn Monroe, a woman whose emotional scars seemed to match Marlon's.
You don't have to be Sigmund Freud to make the connection between Marlon's sense of abandonment as a kid and Marlon's pursuit and promiscuity vis-a-vis women.
Brando rounded out the 1950s with a frenzy of work. He sang and danced his way through Guys and Dolls as Sky Masterson, traveled to Japan to shoot Tea House of the August Moon, and starred in The Young Lions. But Brando shocked everyone in 1957 when he suddenly married Anna Kashfi, who claimed to be of Anglo-Indian descent. Shortly after their marriage, Kashfi's father announced that she had no Indian blood. A stunned Brando accused her of lying, and that soon led to their separation. But Kashfi was pregnant, and on May 16, 1958, their son Christian was born. Brando and Kashfi divorced by the end of the decade, locked in a bitter custodial battle over their son. As the 1960s began, Marlon Brando, at the top of his profession, suddenly had nowhere to go but down.
Our biography of Marlon Brando will continue on A&E. Our biography of Marlon Brando continues on A&E.
Get up, you scum-sucking pig.
The 1960s began with promise for Marlon Brando.
Get up, you tuberguts.
He made his directorial debut with the Western One-Eyed Jacks. But the promise of the film evaporated when it went severely over budget, plagued by numerous delays. Brando eventually became bored with editing the 200 miles of film he had shot and bitterly quit the project altogether. Despite the film's failure, Brando's name was still dynamite at the box office, and MGM was eager to cast him in their lavish production of Mutiny on the Bounty. Brando initially turned down the part, but a lucrative contract from MGM combined with the lure of spending time in Tahiti, where the film would be shot, changed his mind.
Imagine being in Tahiti with Mutiny on the Bounty. Imagine living in the tights of Fletcher Christian and having all these beautiful women in pareas swimming up to the boat. And what a fantasy, what a wonderful fantasy that was for him, being another good guy, a great hero.
Indeed, playing the heroic officer surrounded by bare-breasted Polynesian women seemed like paradise. But the making of Mutiny on the Bounty soon became a bacchanal, plagued by prolonged delays, exacerbated by a temperamental star with a say in the script. MGM poured millions into the picture, which became an industry joke. Finally released in 1962, Mutiny on the Bounty lost millions, nearly capsizing MGM into bankruptcy.
You remarkable pig. You can thank whatever pig god you pray to haven't quite turned me into a murderer.
Marlon Brando was blamed for the failure of Mutiny on the Bounty. His reputation nosedived. But Brando remained unfazed. He was enchanted with Tahiti and began searching for land to buy.
Fletcher Christian is my name.
And he became captivated by a woman, Tarita Tumi Tariapa'i, a 19-year-old Tahitian beauty, his co-star in Mutiny on the Bounty. But no woman could fulfill him. Indeed, Brando seemed to be drifting in the years after his mother's death.
Clearly, a great part of Marlon's early work was meant to satisfy Dodie, to justify himself to Dodie. With Dodie's death, it was as if there was no one left for him to prove himself to.
On July 18, 1965, Marlon Brando lost his father to cancer. Their stormy relationship was over, and Marlon scattered his father's ashes in the wind. But Brando's passions were reignited by the civil rights movement that swept over America in the 1960s. Harry Belafonte courageously enlisted Hollywood stars to join in the struggle, and along with other celebrities like Paul Newman, Brando found a way to use the fame he hated. The star stood up to be counted, risking backlash from the movie establishment.
Never underestimate what those celebrities meant to the movement, because it was the first time in the history of a movement that camera was there.
We must all contribute to what is important to all of us.
Back then, he was bigger than life. When you heard Brando speak, you knew he was sincere.
Somebody made a remark, I can't remember who it was, but it was some historian that said the march of great armies is not so strong as an idea whose time has come.
That's it, yeah. And this is the time.
It's very important, I think.
You could feel it, you could see it. You could see it in his eyes, you could see it the way he walked.
Brando privately gave large sums of money to the cause, and in 1966 spent even bigger bucks on Tetiaroa, a paradise consisting of several small islands north of Tahiti. The hideaway provided the perfect location to escape his activism and public life. Professionally, Marlon was turning out a succession of flop movies.
Appaloosa, Moratori, Countess of Hong Kong. You know, he's been asked to do Hamlet, you know, in England with Laurence Olivier. He's been asked to do this, that. He refuses. Instead, what he's doing is he's, you know, taking these tawdry roles, quick buck productions, and really burying himself more and more in depression.
Brando's depression was deepened by the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1968. Brando, heartbroken, lost, and confused, turned away work. And by the end of the 1960s, no one knew what the actor wanted to do beyond spending time on his Tahitian island, the one place Marlon Brando could feel like a king.
Our biography of Marlon Brando will continue on A&E. Our biography of Marlon Brando continues on A&E.
The 1970s began with a birth for Marlon Brando. Tarita gave him a daughter named Tarita Zumi Cheyenne on February 20th, 1970. Brando adored his baby and called her Cheyenne to express his deepening commitment to Native American issues. Outraged at centuries of violence and abuse directed at Native Americans, Brando became a passionate advocate for their cause and generous supporter of AIM, the American Indian movement.
Marlon was one of the finest supporters the American Indian ever had. He was a man of his word. He gave forth enormous sums of money. I would venture to say, you know, anywhere up to $1 million.
But Brando needed a way to keep that money flowing. A decade of bad movies had left him dead in the water. In late 1970, Paramount Pictures hired a young director named Francis Ford Coppola to bring a best-selling novel by Mario Puzo to life on screen. Puzo's novel, The Godfather. Puzo wanted Marlon for the role of Don Vito Corleone, the Godfather himself. Paramount flatly refused. But the 31-year-old Coppola nervously asked Brando to screen test. Brando agreed.
He was interested in the role. His interest was aroused by it, so his passions were aroused by it. And he really felt that it was a story about American capitalism at its best, that the mafia was the expression of American capitalism.
Studio executives were impressed with the screen test. Brando stuffed his cheeks with tissue paper to create the unique jowls of the Godfather and delivered a memorable performance.
Godfather, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
You can act like a man! What's the matter with you? Is this how you turn out a Hollywood Pinocchio that cries like a woman? What can I do? What can I do? What is that nonsense? Ridiculous. You spend time with your family?
Sure I do.
Good. Because a man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man. Come here. You look terrible. I want you to eat. I want you to rest well, and a month from now, this Hollywood big shot's gonna give you what you want.
It's too late. They start shooting in a week.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The Godfather was a smash hit, and Brando was back on top after 14 consecutive flops.
What Brando does in this performance is he's very, very powerful, but he's very, very quiet. That's the secret. Again, Brando making you come up to him on the screen to listen.
In the midst of his professional triumph, Brando endured more personal turmoil. He continued to battle with his former wife, Anna Kashfi, over custody of their son, Christian. Brando took his son with him to France for the filming of Last Tango in Paris. Director Bernardo Bertolucci's intense erotic film drew upon Brando's personal demons. The story was laced with sadomasochistic overtones, and much of the script was improvised on the set.
Bertolucci was also pressing the right buttons. He would tell Marlon, this is a film about both of us. This is a film about your psychoanalysis. It's a film about my psychoanalysis. If you want insight into Marlon Brando, lonely, embattled, bedeviled, truly wandering through life in a state of abject solitude and panic, you look at Last Tango in Paris, and you get scared, and you get properly scared.
Tango brought Brando another wave of critical acclaim. The consensus was that the explicit sexuality was shocking, but Brando's acting was fearless.
You see within him, and the way he carries himself, the beauty that was once Brando. It is a great masterwork of film acting. It's as good a performance as has ever been put on film.
In March of 1973, shortly after Last Tango in Paris was released, Marlon Brando won his second Academy Award for The Godfather. But he sent Native American Sacheen Littlefeather to reject the honor, and she was booed throughout her 2-minute speech, decrying the treatment of her people in the media. For a month, Native American activists had forcibly occupied several buildings at Wounded Knee in North Dakota. Brando's protest at the Oscars came as a jolt of adrenaline to members of the movement.
We were inside Wounded Knee, and we were watching on television. And man, when that happened, when Sasheen walked out there, and it was announced that she was there representing Marlon Brando, and she refused the Oscar, I mean, our morale went through the roof.
In 1974, the leaders of the uprising went on trial. Brando, echoing the rebellious nature he displayed as a child, standing up for the underdog, appeared outside the courthouse in support of his friends. As the 1970s wound down, Brando once again disappeared from public view. He spent more and more of his time in Tahiti. In 1979, Brando briefly returned to the limelight in Apocalypse Now, again working with Francis Ford Coppola. The surreal Vietnam epic was based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Brando played Kurtz, a twisted American officer who free falls into evil. Apocalypse Now became a costly and chaotic quagmire, aided by Brando's self-indulgent, erratic behavior. In the years to come, Marlon Brando would wander through several roles, his occasional moments of dazzling work lost in the mediocre films he appeared in. His life would grow increasingly reclusive, eccentric, and strange, eventually to be shrouded in tragedy and heartbreak.
Search the Biography database on the new Biography website.
Our biography of Marlon Brando continues on A&E.
Marlon Brando spent most of the 1980s in seclusion, barricaded inside his home atop the Hollywood Hills. In 1989, he appeared in A Dry White Season. Brando portrayed a lawyer who defends a white South African school teacher who challenges the government over the murder of a black citizen. He was no longer bothering to learn his lines. He had an assistant read them into a small earpiece he wore on set. After a 9-year absence from films, audiences were shocked at Brando's monumental size.
There's a big hole in Marlon that he can't fill up, and he's not an alcoholic. He's not a doper, so he fills it up with food. I mean, I've seen him go through a gallon of ice cream at a time. I've seen the refrigerator at the house padlocked with the combination locks on it that only the secretaries knew.
I'm interested in everything.
Brando did a rare interview shortly after the release of A Dry White Season and addressed the perception that he had squandered his immense talent.
I don't find acting satisfying. I'm much more interested in writing. And I've sort of lived a contemplative life, trying to figure out what it is that I would like to do. I never really knew.
In 1990, Brando delighted audiences with a send-up of his Godfather character in The Freshman. Brando and co-star Matthew Broderick created comedic sparks in the story of mistaken identities. And Brando put Broderick and the rest of the cast at ease about working with a movie legend.
The intimidation went away, and I just looked forward to the next take. I looked forward to seeing what he would hit my way. You know, it was thrilling. It was one of the best experiences I've had as an actor.
Brando had always been ferociously private and protective of his children, so much so that there was speculation as to the exact number he had. Maybe 9, perhaps 13.
I won't speak of my children or my relationship with them or how I feel about them, because I feel that I don't mind talking with you in this public fashion, but it's nobody's business what I think.
He likes to think of himself as a wonderful father, that his children are the most important thing to him, but he's hard on them. He wants to control their lives completely. He has a hard time letting go, and it caused great suffering.
Brando was at home in Los Angeles on May 16, 1990, when his 32-year-old son, Christian, fired a bullet into the face of Dag Drolet, the French lover of his half-sister, Cheyenne. Drolet was the father of her unborn child. Christian claimed he became enraged when he found out Drolet was beating his sister. The police charged Christian with first-degree murder. In 1991, defense attorneys William Kunstler and Robert Shapiro successfully had the charge reduced to voluntary manslaughter. Testifying at his son's trial, Marlon Brando blamed himself for many of Christian's problems.
I think that perhaps I failed as a father. The tendency always is to blame the other parent, but I'm certain that there were things that I could have done differently had I known better at the time. But I didn't. I did the best I could.
Some people have reported that Christian is the spoiled son of a rich and famous man. What would be your comment to that?
Either they're a lying son of a bitch or that they don't know what they're talking about. This is the Marlon Brando case. If he was black, if he was Mexican, or if he was poor, he wouldn't be in this courtroom. Everybody wants to get a cut of the pie.
Christian Brando pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. His sister, Cheyenne, gave birth to a son, but the young woman was shattered by the events, and after a failed suicide attempt, Brando had her hospitalized for psychiatric treatment.
She said to me, "See, you've seen that film, The Godfather? That is really my father." She spoke of Marlon's cruelty to women. She said, "I will not be one of Marlon Brando's women. I will not have my heart broken." The woman was lucid, the woman was feeling, the woman was in deep pain.
Cheyenne eventually returned to Tahiti, where she lost custody of her 4-year-old son when a judge ruled she was mentally unfit. On Easter Sunday, 1995, she hanged herself. She was 25 years old. 2 days later, she was buried beside her lover, Dag Drolet. Marlon Brando did not attend the funeral of the child he once proclaimed to be more precious to him than anything in the world. At the time of Cheyenne's death, a new Brando film, Don Juan de Marco, was drawing respectful reviews for the actor who was once heralded as the greatest in the world. Ironically, Brando played an aging psychiatrist, probing the meaning and mystery of love. Marlon Brando loves the wind. During his long career, he has blown across the world's imagination with the force of a hurricane. The range of his talent is staggering. But Brando the man can be as impossible to grasp as the wind itself.
He astounds us. He surprises us. He shocks us. But he never lets us down, you know. He's the one and only. He's the king.
There's before Marlon Brando and there's after Marlon Brando, and I and my generation are all after him. It will never be the same as before him.
I think he challenges other actors to be inventive.
Except those who have known Marlon well, I don't think they have a hope of truly understanding the man.
There are times when he faces life and honestly recognizes that there is fear.
You look at Marlon today, this lonely, embittered, narcissistic, 310-pound recluse, and you scratch your head and you say, my God, what waste, what waste. And the echo really is, as fanciful as this sounds, it's Kurtz in Apocalypse Now. The horror of it all.
I don't know what determines happiness in life. I really don't know. Life is a mystery, and it's an unsolvable one. And you just simply live it through. And as you draw your last breath, you say, what was that all about?
Marlon Brando was in the news recently for turning down the role of the Last Don, the Godfather character in the CBS television miniseries based on Mario Puzo's most recent bestseller. He reportedly rejected the $2 to $4 million offer as being too small. He will, however, be appearing in a cameo role in The Brave for first-time director and Brando friend Johnny Depp. That's Marlon Brando, ever determined to go his own way. From acting innovator to musical genius, Mozart. One word says it all. The child prodigy who wrote his first musical piece at age 6. The musician who, in a short life of 36 years, wrote more than 600 compositions. How was this man, who led a turbulent and unhappy life, able to create some of the most beautiful music ever written? Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, tomorrow on Biography. I hope you'll join us. For A&E, I'm Peter Graves.
From their mystical origins in ancient Egypt to their almost royal status today, meet Cats on the Sunday special presentation at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific. Now, American Justice profiles top gangsters and the lawmen who bring them down. Next on A&E.